do today.
Yep.
So let's get into it. Today, you can see on the screen, we're going to be talking about benchmarking and eval data pipelines for the enterprise. Quite a mouthful. Some quick introductions on our side. Next slide, Lavanya. My name is, oh,
Oh,
go back
sorry.
one.
Okay.
You are all good. My name is Kevin. I'm on the go-to-market team here at Unstructured. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and I'm joined by our head of technical product marketing here at Unstructured, Lavanya. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank
The agenda, the agenda for the conversation is a little background on Unstructured, some of the risks around Gen AI, specifically around evals and benchmarking, what we produced pretty recently, our score eval framework, and then how you can deploy internally across the enterprise. Some housekeeping items on our end. If you have chats or you want to interact with us, there's the chat box on the side. If you have a particular question you want us to answer, there is a separate tab for Q&A. So make sure you ask those there. We will send a recording of the webinar after the call this afternoon. And if you are interested in having a conversation with someone like Lavanya or an AI expert, go to our website and book a call. We would love to talk. All right. A little bit of background on Unstructured. We started 3 years ago as an open source library looking to answer the question, do companies struggle to take unstructured data and convert it into a structured JSON output? You flash forward to today, and it's been a pretty incredible ride. We have amazing customers, 50 million open source downloads, and incredible partners who are helping us solve this problem at scale. And so, without further ado, Lavanya, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm going to start with what we are seeing across the market, right? Companies, they're making real bets on generative AI today, not experiments, like real budgets, 5 million, 10 million, sometimes even 50 million, right? But here's kind of the uncomfortable part. Like Gartner predicts that through 2026, 60% of those AI projects will be abandoned if they are not supported by AI-ready data. Now think about how most Gen AI projects start today, right? The conversation, where does it usually begin? It's almost always about the model. Should we use GPT-4, Claude, Gemini? There's like entire procurement process built around that decision. That's where like the excitement is. But once teams try to go live, what we consistently see is the model isn't the problem. The data pipeline is. LLMs are like brutally honest, right? They give you great answers, even to bad inputs, right? If documents are passed incorrectly, if tables get flattened, if content goes missing, or worse, if the system introduces content that kind of never existed, right? That's even bad. That's like hallucinations. But the model is just doing what it's told to do at that case, right? That's the iceberg we are talking about here. Everybody is kind of focused on the model, which is at the tip, but the real risk is actually under the water, which is the data processing pipeline. And if you get that wrong, it doesn't matter how good your model is. You're already on the path to the 60% of the projects that are going to get abandoned. Yeah, now I talk about poor data quality, right? But that kind of sounds kind of abstract. So let's make it a little more concrete, right? I like to think about cost in three buckets. There's direct financial impact, strategic risk, and organization friction, right? First, let's talk about the direct financial impact. Gartner estimates poor data quality will cost organizations close to $12 million a year. That's like every year, not just once. They also estimate 20 to 30% of the revenue is lost to data inefficiencies. Even if you discount the number, that's still massive. There's a concept in data quality called the 1-10-100 rule. If you catch a data issue right when the document enter your system, like during parsing, it costs about like $1 to fix. If it propagates downstream, it is $10. If it reaches your decision-making systems or your customer-facing AI, that's like $100. So document parsing isn't just plumbing, right? It's a place where mistakes are like cheapest to prevent. Next, let's look at strategic risk. Bad data creates compliance exposure, especially in like sectors like healthcare and finance. This is very important. Bad data, again, erodes brand trust when your AI answers confidently but incorrectly. It also slows time to market because your teams are constantly fixing problems instead of like shipping AI features. And the third is organizational friction. This one quietly kills momentum, right? Like 80% of your engineer's time is spent in like data pre-processing and cleanup, not building AI, but fixing data quality and like broken pipelines. Over time, the business will stop trusting the AI outputs, manual review will creep back in, like confidence will fade. So poor data quality isn't just expensive, it's like a compounding cost center. Given all this, you'll expect like evaluation of document processing to be very rigorous. But what we see in practice is it's not that. This is what like current evaluation looks like today, right? It actually starts with like marketing claims, 99% accuracy. Like it's like tested on like a sample set of documents. Then comes the demo, right? It's perfect PDFs, everything works, everyone nods. If the team is more technical, they might ask for like metrics like TEDs or character error rate. Again, these metrics are designed for like traditional OCR and not for the modern generative AI pipelines that use LLMs or VLMs. The engineering does next what I lovingly call the vibe check. They'll run like 50 documents, maybe 100 documents. Everything seems fine. And suddenly the organization is like committing like $500,000 to like $5 million in investment. The last step is what nobody plans for, right? Is production reality. There's messy scans, edge cases, multi-page tables, like handwritten forms. And that's when things that looked amazing in the demo kind of starts to fall apart. And this doesn't happen because like teams are careless. It happens because our evaluation methods haven't kept up with the technology. We are trying to analyze like the 2026 GenAI systems with like 90s tools. So why does this break consistently, right? It comes down to four things. One, today there's no standardized comparison method, right? Different vendors, they test on different documents, different metrics. Second, the demos are cherry picked, right? They are designed to win, not to reflect what is there in production. Third, the wrong metrics that we talked about earlier, like TEDs and character error rate, which was designed for OCR and not for like LLMs and VLMs that are part of the modern generative AI pipelines. And finally, the data sets are like clean, controlled academic data sets and nothing like the real world enterprise documents. So we end up making like these multi-million dollar decisions on like incomplete evidence. And we wouldn't do that for any other core infrastructure. To kind of close this gap, we at Unstructured introduce what we call as SCORE. SCORE stands for Structural and Content Robust Evaluation. Now, the name is a mouthful, but the idea is actually simple. SCORE measures things that actually break generative AI pipelines. Things like, did the layout survive? Did tables get extracted correctly? Did the systems hallucinate content? And it's built specifically for the generative AI data processing pipelines. A few things make SCORE different. First, it is open source. You can inspect the methodology. There is no black box. Second, it is vendor neutral. You can run it against any of your systems. And third, it is production focused. It measures what actually predicts downstream AI success and not what looks good on a marketing page or a slide. And fourth, it's multi-dimensional, right? It's not just based off a single score, but it has like 5 dimensions that you can measure quality on. From a business standpoint, score helps you like de-risk your vendor selection, justify investment with like evidence based on metrics, establish quality baselines, and also enforce like measurable SLAs. It shows where your system is strong, where it's fragile, and what those failures actually mean in practice. And as I mentioned, score is not just based on one metric, it's based on like 5 dimensions for measuring quality, right? And that's intentional because different failures create different kind of risks. So let me walk you through the 5 dimensions and why each one of them matters for production. First, let's talk about content fidelity. Content fidelity like answers a simple question. Of the content you extracted, is everything correct? For example, if a number is misread, a symbol is dropped, or a word is missed, your AI is now reasoning on partial truth. For instance, a missing not clause in a contract is not a small error, it becomes like a legal problem. The second is hallucination control. This measures whether the system introduces content that was never present in the source. And I think this is the most dangerous failure, right? Because hallucinated content looks very legitimate downstream. One invented date or a clause can quietly turn into like a compliance issue. The third dimension is coverage completeness. How much of the original document did we actually capture? If content is missing, your AI is actually working with blind spots, right? Sometimes it'll say, I don't know, but sometimes it can actually confidently answer with incomplete context, which is actually worse. Now, the fourth dimension is structural understanding. Did we preserve hierarchy, like the headers, sections, the nesting of the tables, and the order in your documents? Structure is what enables like citation, navigation, and traceability. Without it, you cannot explain where an answer came from. And that's like a deal breaker for like audits or any regulated workflows. And the fifth and last dimension is table extraction, right? Not just whether we extracted text, but whether we preserve like the cell level meaning and the spatial relationships in tables. And this is a huge, this is where like a huge amount of enterprise value actually lives. Like financial statement, pricing models, inventories, clinical results, they are all in tables. And if they are misread, it's not just you're slightly wrong, you're kind of like strategically wrong there. So score, as I mentioned, it doesn't tell you if a system is good or bad. It shows you where the risk is, how severe it is, and whether that risk is actually acceptable for your use case. Now, metrics, the score metrics or any metrics matter only if they are tested on reality, right? Production kind of documents. And that's where score bench comes in. So we built SCORE, which is the evaluation framework. That's the methodology. And we also built SCORE Bench, which is the data set, right? These are real world enterprise documents. So think of it this way. SCORE is how you measure, and SCORE Bench is what you measure on. Both are open source. That means you can use SCORE to evaluate vendors on your own documents, or you can use SCORE Bench to get like a standardized, like apples to apples comparison across systems. Now, here's what makes Scorebench different, right? You're not testing on like clean academic PDFs like from research papers, or you're testing on reality. This could be like skewed scans, forms filled out by hand, dense financial tables that span multiple pages, technical manuals with like multi-column layout, or documents from regulated industries like healthcare, finance, and legal, where document pipelines actually like make mistakes. So why does this matter, right? Because POCs will always look great on clean PDFs. Everybody will show you beautiful results with those. But when you hit production with these actual documents, that's when everything breaks. So Score Bench helps you stress test your systems on enterprise complexity before you make your multi-million-dollar investment. Um, all right. So this is where like the rubber actually meets the road, right? So we benchmark like leading document parsing platforms using SCORE, which is the evaluation framework, and SCORE Bench, which is the data set. So we have same documents, same metrics, complete transparent methodology here. And I want to walk you through what we found because the differences are kind of meaningful, right? So let me start with what we are measuring here. Across the top, you'll see like 6 metrics. This maps the 5 dimensions that we talked about earlier. So adjusted CCT, that's content fidelity. And tokens found is coverage completeness, like how much of the source document was extracted. Tokens added is the hallucination rate. How much is the system making up? Element alignment is the structural fidelity. And the table cell level content accuracy and cell level spatial accuracy are for table extraction, right? Now look at the top row, that's unstructured, right? We kind of lead pretty much across every dimension. But what I really want you to notice isn't just who's higher, it's like the trade-offs, right? Some systems, they do okay on content, but hallucinate more. Some preserve structure, but they kind of fall apart on. Some extract aggressively, but they kind of lose fidelity. And this is exactly the value of score. It makes those trade-offs visible before you're committed. So the decision becomes like engineering with risk management, not just like demo polish or a brand recognition. So now we've looked at score, score benchmark. I want to make this a little real, right? Because frameworks are great, but the end of the day is how does this help me make a decision? And This is where I think score really starts to matter, right? The metrics aren't just about accuracy. They help you assess things that you care about in production, like the total cost of ownership, scalability, compliance. And are not just made on technical accuracy, right? They get made on dollars. So we're going to start there. So here's a simple scenario, right? Say you're processing 100,000 documents, right? We'll focus on two metrics from score that usually drive cost the fastest, like hallucinations and table accuracy. If a system has a hallucination rate, like in the lower single or double digits, you are not just getting slightly imperfect results, you're getting like 10,000s of bad outputs, right? And think about the remediation cost for it. If an internal team is fixing it, it might be again be in the 10,000s, but worse if it becomes like a customer facing error, right? Then it's hundreds of thousands or if not millions in like avoidable cost. And tables are a little more dramatic, right? If your table accuracy is say like 60%, you're not just buying automation, you bought a part-time job for your entire engineering team because they have to fix the 40,000 tables that require like manual review and correction. And this is why score matters. Because when you choose a document processing partner, you're not just picking a vendor for today, you're choosing like your total cost of ownership for the next 3 years. If your use case relies on like high stakes data, choosing a partner like Unstructured with like lower hallucination rates, better table accuracy isn't just a technical win, it's like a massive financial win. Because at the end of the day, the cheapest vendor is not the one with like the lowest sticker price, but it's the one that doesn't leave you with like a cleanup bill later on. Now, cost is not the only thing that matters, right? Scale also matters. And we've all seen this classic POC failure pattern, right? Your POC on 1,000 clean documents looks like a miracle. At 100,000 document, things start getting weird. By the time you hit like 10 million, your system is smoking. Why did that happen? Because production is not a lab, right? It's a messy world of like document diversity, edge cases, and also costs that explode faster than what you planned for, right? At Unstructured, we use score to find those breaking points early so they never show up in your production environment. And here's how we build for that, right? We test our platform on like reality, not just research documents. So it's tested on like messy scans, fax form, complex financial. So it's actually production ready. And our pipelines are they have like multi pipeline options. So it can be routing documents, not just for accuracy, but also for cost. And we also provide like transparent cost per page modeling upfront. So you know what 10 million pages will cost you upfront. Now let's say, so with score, as you can see, you can test for production reality and know that your system will scale. The next thing that usually comes up after you've decided about cost and scale is for the regulated teams, right? They want to know if the system is compliant or auditable. And especially if you're in like healthcare, finance, or legal, the question is always simple, right? Can you prove the AI generated insight came from like an accurate source of data and not a hallucination? Without like quantified hallucination rates or preserved table structure, you cannot confidently answer that. You can't distinguish like what's real from what's fabricated. You can't cite sources precisely. With score, you can actually walk into like audits with like evidence. You have measurable hallucination rates, you have structural traceability, and a reproducible methodology where you can get the metrics again, right? So with score, you can also like prove compliance and auditability. So the next obvious question that comes now that we've talked about like cost, scale, compliance, how can you actually use score on a day-to-day basis, right? Not just as a one-time benchmark, but something that can actually help you guide decisions, right? And this is how, here is like the operational approach that we recommend for score. First, benchmark. Run score on your real domain-specific documents to first establish a baseline. Second, define what metrics matter most to you. So you can map the business risk to the score dimensions. Third, compare, right? Now you can compare your internal approaches or evaluate vendors using these apples to apple metrics. And fourth, you can monitor, right? Track these metrics in production because drift is real. Document types will evolve, silent degradation will happen. So score kind of becomes like this quality control loop and not just a one-off evaluation. And so to kind of like give key takeaways, the first one is the biggest risk, as we saw to Gen AI project, isn't the model, right? It's the data pipeline. If you're using like legacy metrics to kind of judge it, you're just building false confidence. And that's where score comes in. It gives you like a defensible, standardized way to measure what actually matters and also the impact like cost, scalability, and compliance. And if you take one thing away today, I think it should be this like make score part of your procurement process and keep it running in production because you don't have to just hope it works, your document pipeline, but you know it does when you're running score. Um, on this slide, I've shared some resources that can help you get started with score today. And if you'd like to like help setting it up or you have more questions, you can reach out to our team using the contact link that I provided. Um, and finally, the next webinar, we are going to dive a little more deeper into how we build and maintain connectors. So do join us for that if you want to know the internal architecture of how our pipeline actually works.
Awesome. Lavanya, thank you so much. What a fantastic presentation. Awesome. We have a few questions we can get to. And like I said at the beginning, if you have anything, make sure to post in that Q&A tab. Okay, here's one. Most vendors claim to have high accuracy. What motivated you to build a benchmark instead of relying on vendor-reported metrics? So I think first off, you should never take anyone's word for it. And I say that as the vendor who wants you to take my word for it. My life would be far easier if you did. The score framework is our attempt to buck that trend. So it's like, hey, instead of listening to the vendor, like test it, chew on it, make sure that this works for your documents and your use case, and pick what's right for your team. Okay. Another question is if an enterprise only takes one thing away from score, what should it be? I think Lavanya said this towards the end, which is like when you start an AI product or you start building one, have an evaluation framework in mind. Like this is a kind of wild thing to say out loud, but if you cannot be successful if you do not have a clear definition of what success is before you start building. Um, Okay, what does good enough ingestion look like? Um, I think it's like if users use the product, like starting out is like, do people come back to use these AI products? And then going a layer deeper for production grade, like how do you have a system where you can continually monitor, measure, and improve these AI systems so that they're constantly getting better at scale? And that's kind of the purpose with Score. Um, One last question. Does higher quality ingestion always mean higher costs, or have you seen the opposite in practice? No, not always. I think more complex the document, typically the higher the cost for ingestion and transformation. Lavanya, any thoughts on your end for that last question? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I think I reiterate what you said, Kevin. Like, I think it depends on the complexity of the document. It's not like an accuracy to cost relationship, is more on complexity to cost. Again, what kind of model you're using to kind of extract data, all of those comes into picture.
yeah, it's like token density of the documents.
Mhm.
Um, awesome. Lavanya, any parting words for the team?
Yeah, I mean, what I kind of said when I finished off is like, don't just base your evaluation of like document processing pipelines based on like marketing claims or just demos. Use a framework like SCORE, where you can actually see the metrics. You can assess which ones you care about, like does your document framework have a lot of tables or does it have like or do you care about extracting all the content without hallucinating? So you have those five different metrics and you can base your decisions or you can make your decisions based on which metrics matter the most And I think that'll be a good way to evaluate a pipeline rather than just say looking off at like claims that say 99% accuracy or just at most.
Awesome. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. Like Lavanya said, we will have another webinar in the coming weeks. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday, and we will see y'all soon. Bye, everyone.